Today I'm talking to someone, a very, very interesting individual who likes to smile. And she doesn't look like what she's been through. But by the grace of God, Joann Anokwuru is a special human being. She was my classmate back in 1986 at the Federal Government College, Odogbolu. And she went on to UI to read special education, where she did her first and second degrees. And she also went on to do masters in University of British Columbia in curriculum and leadership. And also her PhD is in curriculum studies from the same University of British Columbia. Certified assessor, right? From the Real Trade in UK, and she's a member of the British Psychology Society of the UK, and also has an advanced diploma in inclusive education from Belfast in Ireland. Now, Joann, I like your glasses.
I know.
And then it just goes with your shirt.
It's obvious.
I don't want to tell people the history of your shirt.
It's not you.
Oh, come on, come on. We like to score. Yeah, we like to score. I just had some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful scores. You know, when Messi passes the ball and then passes it on to Ronaldo. Ronaldo passes it back and Messi dribbles one, dribbles two, dribbles three. And then wires the net.
And I scored the goal and I dribbled the ball from Obeni. And then I scored the goal and I get 2/2. How do I get this?
Come on. You're such a disgrace to football. You dribble the ball.
I dribble the ball.
Nobody dribbles the ball. You dribble someone.
Okay, I dribble you to take the ball from you, and I hit it into the goalpost, and they give me 2 instead of 1 goal.
Please stay with fantasy football. Joann,
Yes.
it's a pleasure to have you on Wired Differently.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up being very, very sickly. I had asthma. I was misdiagnosed with what they call it, sickle cell, which I really didn't have. Finally, and I found out that when I got married, and I found out like, you were AA.
Wait a minute.
I was never an SS.
You only found out after you got married?
Just before I got married, because you know you have to go through all of those medical.
So you lived
all my years in denial.
like how many years? 20?
I got married at 28.
28 years?
Yes, of my life.
So you were consigned.
I was, yes, you know, exactly. But then I always wanted to study, just go to school and study something and come out of the university, because I finished high school at the age of 14. And
yeah, I understand.
So
the youngest of our set.
Yeah, I was the youngest of the set, the youngest female of our set, because I still am older than one of the people in our set.
It's okay.
But then, you know, I was just so eager to go through school, and I just wanted to go to university. But I remember.
No, but let me just take you straight.
Yeah.
Why special education?
That's what I'm saying. So I wanted to just go study a course in the university, and I remember applying to University of Maiduguri and UI, University of Ibadan. And I just saw my admission letter come to the house, and it was special education. And I was like, what? Because I come from a home where my mom is a teacher, all her siblings are teachers. On my father's side, I had an uncle who was a teacher as well. And I was like, you know the way teachers dress, very uncoordinated. They're the poorest of the people on.
You're saying this with your mouth.
That's what the world says. Our reward is in heaven.
No. You just dissed your parents on television. You just dissed them. You just dissed them now.
But you know that was the universal concern of being a teacher, because there was always this cliche or this verse that, oh, teachers, your reward is in heaven. So just make sure whatever you do, you're poor on earth. You know, so I remember receiving that letter that day, and I was like, special education. I was sad, but at the same time, I knew it was for a purpose, and I was so determined to go on to university, because I didn't want to sit at home again, because I'd already done my A-levels, you know, and I remember my dad coming back, and I said, Daddy, I just got my admission letter and they said I'm studying special education. Daddy, does that mean I'll be poor for life? Actually, if you know my dad. So I said, Daddy, please, can you take me down to British Council down at Ikoyi so that I can go there was no computer or phone. So I got to British Council, and that was the British Council Library in Ikoyi. And I sat down there and I started looking through. And I saw that they were studying special, and they had special education in University of Birmingham, special education in Manchester, and they said I was going to be working with children with disability. Stepping back, I had a cousin who had disability, global disability. And then I used to go to my auntie's house, and I just loved to spend time with this cousin, but I never found myself that this is what I'm going to be studying. So I finished, my dad picked me up, and my daddy said, okay, Joann, what's your option? I said, Daddy, I'll go for it.
And then you studied special education. And you didn't only just do it in a first degree, you still went on to do a master's. There's some very stirring story that you told about MKO Abiola.
Yeah. So I actually wrote that story in a book. I published a chapter in a book called We Will Lead Africa, Volume 2. So I remember in my second year, I'd actually applied to be transferred to the Faculty of Law at UI, because then UI had moved from doing law as a second degree to doing law as a first degree. And so that weekend I go home and my dad said, hey, we're going to dinner in someone's house. Okay. So my mom, my dad, my siblings, and all of us, and guess whose house was it? Are Kakanfo, MKO Abiola.
Are Kakanfo.
Okay, MK Abiola.
Are Kakanfo.
Okay.
Kakanfo.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So we got in, and I was like, oh my, Daddy, do you know he was the president for the special ed thing, because I think he had even come to UI the year or 2 years before to give a talk. And from the research I'd done, he had actually provided scholarship to so many hearing impaired students to Gallaudet University in the US. So as we got talking, he turned over to me and said, my daughter, what are you studying? And I said, I'm studying special education, but I want to change to law. I tell you, that was when my socks blew off.
Your socks?
Yes.
What happened?
It's a slow.
I know it's an
that's
idiom.
when it's an idiom. And I was like, oh my, the kind of lecture I had that evening.
From the same MKO.
MKO.
Can you say it the way he said it?
I can't really, I can't say it verbatim, because again, he's
use his voice, use his voice.
I can't use, yeah, exactly. Voiceover, and being a stutterer, a stutterer, I said, my daughter, why are you changing from special ed to law? That is one of the best courses you will ever want to study. Something like, it's a way of giving back to the society. And I remember him saying, if I had had best teachers like you, I won't be where I am now. And I'm like, a very multi-millionaire. Where else would you want to be? And
Go figure.
And that dawned on me. I was like, he said, you can't change because you're going to make a difference in people's life.
Vintage MKO.
And I tell you, I walked out of that house evening and I told my dad, that's it. So, amazingly, he said, when you finish your first degree, I will sponsor you for your master's. And then that was the very year he became incarcerated.
Wow.
Which was like, did it stop me from pushing on? I said no. That's when I now moved on to UI to go finally do the master's degree. And then after master's in UI, I went and studied French for a year.
You can speak French?
Un peu. Un peu. Je parle français un peu. Je m'appelle Joann.
Comment t'appelles-tu?
Je m'appelle Joann.
Mademoiselle.
Non, je ne suis
Bonsoir.
pas mademoiselle, je suis madame.
All right, let's go back. Let's go back to special education. Okay, in the years that you've been in doing this course, how do you think you have fared? What are the things that you feel? I mean, have you been able to really actualize the words of MKO Abiola?
Yes, because I would tell you, I did get hiccups somewhere along the line, because after I finished my master's and did the French, I went back to UI to go do my PhD for 4 years. And this was 94, 95. And I was going to actually design an app. So you know, as 94, 95, we didn't have phones. Back then. And my specialty, I'll give you a brief overview. My first degree, the good thing about University of Ibadan, you have a major and you have a minor.
Right.
So my major for my undergrad was education for the visually impaired, and my minor was education for then mental retarded, but the terminology has changed now to intellectual disability. And for my master's, I specialized in education for the deaf, and my minor was gifted. Okay. You know, but the good thing about studying education in Nigeria is that you do K2 from 0 to 99. You know, so those were my areas of specialty. So I could read and write Braille, I could do sign language, and you know, all of that. And then I could work with kids who are gifted. When I was doing my PhD, I went back to education for the visually impaired. Why? Because we have a lot of people with visual impairment on the streets.
Yeah.
The only way you can interact with the sighted is either you type something and the person who is visually impaired types, or you vice versa, you use the Braille. This is me. I could read and write Braille. I could teach using the slate and stylus, because for my practicum, I taught in a school for the blind here, and I was doing slate and stylus. I could teach math. Can you imagine? I taught math for someone who has dyscalculia.
Joann, please, please. Exaggeration isn't going to help you. How can you say you taught math?
Because I could teach elementary math. Primary 2, primary 3. Very simple math.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think I was just being progressive in the way I was thinking. And did I meet a brick wall? Yes. I became frustrated. And so 4 years into my PhD, I told my daddy, I said, Daddy, I found a man I want to go and marry. And that's what made me leave the PhD.
Joann, because of man. Because of man.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Anokwuru. You strong, go.
No, but that's why, but you see, that's why after the years, he knew my dad's passion for me to become a doctor.
Don't cover this matter.
He
we have
knew
not
that I
finished
needed
this
to
matter.
do PhD. And that's why he said,
Joann,
years down the line, go and do that PhD.
Dr. Joann Anokwuru.
Better. That's how you should.
You followed man.
Who do I want to follow before?
You follow man.
Who do I want to follow before?
You have been following man since.
Yes, so since I was born. My father born me now. No be man.
Oh, you don't enter.
My father, no be my papa born me.
What kind of impact that your knowledge of special education, what kind of impact has it made on people with disability? You don't have any disability, yet you have a heart for them. What sort of impact have you made in this area? Look at Nigeria in your answer and say, okay, is there really a national policy that favors the disabled?
If I have to speak on the policy component, Nigeria, in our national policy on education, I think that's section 7 or section 6, I'm still trying, has a full breakup of the different types of disability, categories of disability, and support. Nigeria was part of the countries that signed the Salamanca Framework on inclusive education from, that was 1994. And so basically Nigeria also had its national policy of education, section 6, where we have everything listed around special ed. But then, over the years, we've come into a place of most special education programs are segregated schools, where you have school for the blind, school for the deaf, school for the hearing impaired, school for the intellectual disability. But I think after the 1994 Salamanca framework, where the United Nations insisted or sort of like encouraged countries to move away from segregated system of learning, because that's hinged on the medical model of disability. What does the medical model of disability mean? It's like, let's fix these people. Let's offer intervention, which is a word that is gradually being taken off from the lingo, because you're not fixing anyone. You go to the medical doctor not to be fixed, but to provide a cure or provide support for your health, you know. So from the medical model, we moved on to the social model. But that said, Nigeria now, after 1994, even though those segregated schools still exist, but if we go back down again memory lane, before colonization, there was nothing like segregated school. Everyone lived a communal life. But then colonizers...
How well are the normal schools able to really attend to the needs?
We don't, there's nobody that is normal. It's not called normal school. Okay, it's called inclusive school or regular school, but not normal school, because there's nobody.
What I mean is that what I mean basically is this, and I think you understand what I mean.
I know.
Basically, how well are these schools able to really attend to the needs of disabled persons? Should there be any, apart from those who are mentally, or just who are visually impaired? I mean, what other special thing does it require for to really attend to the needs of people with disabilities?
So I need to correct one lingo that is being used now. We don't say disabled people, we say persons with disability, because the person comes first before the disability. You know, and I'm sure if we go back to the interview you had last time, where it's the individual force, you know, with Dr. Bernadette Kilo, who I listened to and said, it's the individual. It's who the individual force is, not the disability. So that's why the lingo is persons with disability. But again, over the years, we've come to a model called the human rights model, or the rights model, or the person, two models really, person-centered model. And so everyone has a right to education.
Right.
Going back to the human rights of 1945. Everyone has a right. So meaning in the school that is within your locality, every child has a right to come into that school. But the greatest challenge is, how prepared are general education teachers? Kudos to all the general education teachers. I'm a special ed teacher. That's all I've done. General education teachers are the ones who run the regular classrooms. And so when a curriculum is being designed, is being given, and your lesson plan is being designed around the curriculum, how is it that you can design your lesson or the topic to support every single learner? You're not going to design a lesson for the person with visual impaired, or for the person who is hearing impaired, or for the forms of different kids with disability in class. But that's why over the years, different organizations have done research where you can plan a lesson in such a way now is everyone is given access into your learning, into the lesson planned. And one of those frameworks, we have the child-friendly framework, which is in Africa. We also have the Universal Design Learning of Universal Design for Learning framework, the UDL framework. And what does that mean is, when I'm planning a lesson, I can do it in such a way I give children multiple means of engaging. And what do I mean by that is, I can engage you because I know we will have visual learners in the class. We will have kids who are hearing impaired, so they might not have that auditory component to listen, but then they can see something on the screen with closed caption.
Right.
For someone who is visually impaired will hear you, and meaning they're listening to you, and they're able to use their braille or their typewriter. For someone who is dyslexic, or someone who is learning disability, who has the designation of being learning disabled, because you've engaged them, you can say, you know what, this is one way. You give them assistive technology to engage with their learning. So, but you see, there's nowhere that says if you do not read and write, you cannot perform in life. So we've so hinged our entire learning around reading and writing that other genres of way of learning, which is listening, which is speaking, is missing. If I can represent then multiple means of representation is how is it that the teacher can also represent their topic in multiple ways. And then multiple means of expression, action and expression means, oh, Joann loves to write, Joann writes. Olumide loves to do an artistic expression. Use artistic expression to show your learning. Oh, Tunde loves music. Tunde uses music to represent his learning.
So in other words, you're saying that there are definite gaps in the education curriculum.
No, there's no definite gap in education curriculum. It's the pedagogy, it's the instructional approaches that's where it's missing.
So what should happen?
Teachers go for professional development. I don't like using the word training, but I use professional development. And why don't I like using the word training? Training is going back to the machine generation where you push someone, train them, they come out and that's it. But you see, you go for professional development because you're developing what you know.
All right.
You're going in there to say, I want to enhance my knowledge. You take that knowledge and you go back. So that's something we call action research. You take your knowledge, go to the classroom, work with your students. After working with your students, you ask your students for feedback. How many teachers, how many of us as educators ask our students, how have I done today? Do you understand the lesson? Every kid will tell you yes. But when you give your students exit slip, it's like you just give them low stakes tests because you just want to find out how much of them have gained concept in what has been taught. Then for the kids with designation or I use designation or disabilities interchangeably. The kids with designation or disabilities in the classroom, because you've designed your lesson in such a way that there are different modalities, you've offered kids multimodal ways of learning and understanding. Different kids will represent their learning. Unfortunately, because we're a very exam-based society where there's common entrance, there's WAEC, there's junior WAEC, and this is me speaking to all the exam bodies, we need to go back to the drawing table and see how is it we can support all learners, and I mean all, because no child should be left behind. Every child has a right to some form of academic and social inclusion within the school space. Even if the child is able to identify numbers through a multimodal way, not necessarily writing 1, 2, 3. Or if the child is able to say, you know what, I see a bag, B-A-G, and then you put the bag beside the word. And then you put an action of what the bag can be used for. And the child is able to read it. There's something I do regularly with some of my, okay, you can't write, let's do an oral presentation of your quiz. That is not offered in so many standardized exams.
And yet you still get good results from that.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that there's no success. I mean, it's all success story.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just trying to narrow down to how special education. What's the interrelationship with autism?
So, special education is an overarching education for, they say, kids with special needs. The terminology keeps changing. Children with special needs, children with additional needs, children with disabilities, depending on the context you're in. So autism is one of the designation of one of the categories of children with disabilities under that special education offers support.
But I keep hearing that autism is not a disability. So how do we now?
It's a neurological disorder that still will need a special ed teacher to offer all of those, because they come into the school system, but then they will still need that support in the classroom, because it's a spectrum. I had this child on the spectrum. Oh my gosh, so sociable. He talks to everyone and anybody. And sometimes I'm like, I think this boy was misdiagnosed. But then when he comes to academic work, then you see some of the things, but very sociable. In that same space, and this was a class of me with 15 children on the spectrum, not one of them represented the same thing. Maybe you might see some, like all of them showing that lack of social interaction, but this particular one will come into the class and say, Joann, I love you, and then he's talking to everybody. And then others will come in and just go to their corners and not talk to anyone and get engaged with their work. And this is one child who loved social stories. He comes with every story. By the time I say today we're going to be talking about bullying, he will bring you something about bullying. He will tell me where to go and find a video on YouTube, because I use YouTube to engage or recruit their interests.
Let me, you know, I know that you live in Canada and therefore you're more or less moved climes, but your engagement at this autism conference tells me that it goes beyond just, you're still very passionate about your roots. Now the question is, are we still in denial in Nigeria about autism?
Can I take a deep breath? I conducted my PhD research in Nigeria, in which I interviewed students I worked with during my first practicum, which was 1990. I graduated from my undergrad in 91. And so my first practicum was 1990. So you can imagine, and those kids were in primary 2, so maybe 9 years, 10 years. And then over the years, before my very first job, which was 2001, so you can imagine 1991, my first job was 2001, 10 years in between, because I grappled with trying to get a job as a special educator. So while in that context, I sort of like was working with children with disabilities in my parents' house. So some of those kids I interviewed for my data and some for my research. The findings from that research was stigma. Also cultural misunderstanding or being misconstrued by our cultural underpinning of what is disability, because we still have those superstitious belief that it's contagious.
Contagious?
Yes. You have a child with disability, nobody wants to invite you or your family into their home for a party or for an event because they believe your child is not supposed to be seen or heard. So one of the greatest barriers to families and pain, the pain of so many parents with disabilities is, how do I tell my neighbor I have a kid with disability? How do I tell my family I have a child with disability? How do I grapple?
In other words, they're putting the cart before the horse.
And so in those number of years they're spending trying to go away from that space of denial. It takes forever to get them to the level of acceptance. Because we all go through pregnancy and then, everyone is waiting for, I'm going to be having a child soon. And then the doctor gives you that boom, that place of shock. That initial shock. So I can't play soccer with my child. So I can't do encore. Because with pregnancy, everybody's planning for the future. And then, so you go from the stage of shock to denial. And then there's that blame game. It's from the woman's family, it's from the man's family, it's from so everybody's looking for who to trade blames on. And so from research, the certain percentage of parents that ever come out of denial to get to a level of acceptance is minute.
So stigma is playing quite a big game with us at the moment. Yeah. Stigma is saying to us that it's what's standing in the way of people understanding exactly what needs to be done in this situation. And one of the findings, and one of the conclusive parents are asking is using this forum to create awareness that these kids are not contagious
that let's use media as a way to create awareness that when you see a child with disabilities on the road, additional needs, exceptional needs, embrace them, embrace their family. No child was asked to be born that way. And like one parent said, I won't throw my child with the bath water.
So what can be done to increase the level of awareness within the Nigerian polity and within the different peoples? What can be done to reverse this denial, to make us care better?
I also wrote this in my dissertation, that I'm calling on all religious bodies. Yeah, I'm calling on all religious bodies to use their platform, because this is a country that is so premised on religion. It's either Christian, Muslim, traditional. And we all sort of like, those are places where we look up to.
Gravitate to.
I tell you. And if only all of these spaces come out and tell the world, as long as you're praying, also go out and seek for help from all of the experts. Don't tell the parent that, oh, bring that child, I will exorcise that demon out. 7, 8 years, and then by the time then the child comes back to us at 8 years, the formative years of that child is gone.
Which is when early detection...
early childhood, yeah.
Really works, right?
Yeah, so and again, this is my proposal. This is what I'm asking in my dissertation, because I conducted my research in this country.
So you think religious bodies, more or less, in conducting deliverance or something like that, they impute demonism?
No, the thing is that because the parents are busy seeking for help everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that instead of you coming to say, hey, come, let me pray out that demon. While praying, also tell the parents, seek help from other professionals.
So we're saying there's a place for prayer.
There is a
place for
knowledge.
Right.
You know, so, but then I need us to use those religious platforms to say, you know what, seek, because that's number one. 2, because even if the government is saying we will offer support, the greatest disservice again, and I'm going to use your platform to say this, parents with children with disabilities are grappling with support in this country. They fund themselves. They pay for psych ed assessment. They pay for therapists. They literally pay from their pockets. And like I shared in that research, my findings, I came up with what I called the ecological framework. We have the child in the center. We have the microsystem where we have the schools, the neighbors, the teachers, and everyone, and parents, neighbors collaborating. Neighbors need to also realize that that family is grappling with so many things and they will need the support. But then if you look at the meso and exosystem, it's where you and I are going to work. I have a kid with disability and I need to take my child for therapy on Monday. I need to take my child for occupational therapy on Tuesday. And my boss doesn't understand. So what do? I resign from work. Because my boss keeps telling me, why do you keep going every day?
And that can stunt growth in different ways
and
also affect families.
Exactly. So that's why in the meso system, I'm asking again that all the officers learn to connect with your staff, because some of your staff might be going through this process of dealing with a kid with disability. How can they be of immense support? Like I know that in Nigeria, some offices have creches for children, for babies. So how do you support? And from my dissertation, I know 1 or 2 families who had, one parent had to stop working because they got to a point of like, they got tired of constantly asking for day off. Or even the child is in school and they get a phone call from the school, say, come and pick your child. He's just done this. Come and pick your child. They've just done this, you know?
I think that we have not fully embraced the reality of autism If we look at prevalence studies done by different professionals in the Nigerian space, there is Bakare who says that one was done, says the prevalence is about 1 in 145 children in sub-Saharan Africa. And then there's 0.8% of 393 children attending a clinic over a period of 1 year. There is 2.3% of 2,320 by Lagunju over 6 years in the entire Southwest. There's 11.4% of 44 children in a special school in Southeast Nigeria. So you have different figures. What I don't understand is why we do not have a clear policy on autism in Nigeria that would help even teachers to understand exactly what they're grappling with.
I still say it again, we have policies. But you see, teachers have so much to deal with to start going to look at policies. What teachers really need is, number one, resources. What teachers also need is what framework to use to support all these numbers that we have. Numbers is for us researchers. Because I love conducting, I love numbers. I love working with numbers because that helps me inform whatever I'm doing. But the goal is the teachers, because once you have those numbers, you can now go out and say, based on these numbers, these teachers need this and this and this to run their classrooms, to support all learners.
So the charge, and rounding up the charge.
Yes.
The charge is to religious bodies.
Yes.
The charge is to government.
Yes.
The charge is to parents.
And to neighbors.
To neighbors, to the entire society, really, to realize.
Because that's what my framework, that's the framework I came up with. The ecology of inclusive education talks about macro system, policies, data, leadership, government, the exosystem, schools, the exosystem, companies, offices, the microsystem, neighbors, schools, parents, and then the individual, which is the person with disability. And then there's all the fluidity. So it's not that there's hierarchy, there's that fluid movement going from, and in all of this is the situational, the interaction that happens between all of the systems.
All of the systems. So
and the media.
And the media.
And the media falls within all of this.
Which is why we're doing this on Wired Differently. We're trying to be that voice, one of those voices that would help to actually propagate the key tenets of this space. And basically we're saying like, see the person, not the diagnosis.
Exactly.
And in seeing the person, you probably will be able to love the person and love them into being better through understanding where they are and how they can be better in every situation. Joann.
For sure.
Thank you for spending time with me on Wired Differently. I know you're wired differently. I know there are different areas where we disagree. But at the end of the day, what's important is love.
Yes, it is. And I'm grateful to Wired Differently for having me here, because this is one of the future goals for my dissertation. It's using the media as a way to showcase my dissertation, and I'm so excited because I'm going to tell my supervisor that, you know what, I did it when I came to Nigeria.
Wired Differently has come to you.
Thank you.
From this place, and been talking to Dr. Joann Anokwuru, a master's in curriculum studies and curriculum
and leadership,
and that with a PhD in curriculum studies from the University of British Columbia in Canada. And it's been riveting talking with her, and we are grateful that we've had quite a lot of information. We wish we could make this a bit longer, but we'll bring it in snippets, and we hope that you will take it in packets. Thanks for staying with us. Wired Differently. See you next time.